Jake had always enjoyed his little patch of earth. His lawn wasn't perfect. It was a bit wild at the edges, with patches of wildflowers and a few spots where the grass grew longer than the usual neat, trimmed lawns in the neighborhood. To him, it was a small sanctuary, a place where birds could rest, bees could buzz, and nature could quietly thrive amid the rows of cookie-cutter houses. One quiet morning, Jake found an envelope slipped under his front door. The neat handwriting on the envelope caught his eye immediately. It was from Karen. Karen was well known in the neighborhood as a firm member of the Homeowners Association board. She was the kind of person who liked everything in order, from perfectly aligned mailboxes to freshly trimmed hedges. Jake respected her dedication, even if he sometimes found her rules a little too strict. Curious, but slightly apprehensive, Jake opened the letter. The note was polite but direct. His lawn did not meet the community's standards. It was described as overgrown and unkept, and Jake was kindly asked to mow it and remove the wild patches within 7 days. Failure to comply could result in a fine. Jake sighed. Okay, he understood the importance of rules and maintaining the neighborhood's appearance, but this letter felt different. It wasn't just about the grass. It was about the way he chose to live and care for his little plot of land. Instead of feeling angry, Teach decided to approach the situation calmly. He carefully read through the HOA's guidelines and compared them to his lawn. While his yard didn't fit the typical mold, he knew there was value in what he was doing. He had always believed in letting parts of nature flourish rather than fighting it with endless trimming and chemical treatments. Jake thought about Karen. She probably saw his lawn as messy or careless. But what if he could show her a different perspective? Over the next few days, Jake took extra care with his yard. He trimmed the edges neatly and tidied up some of the wildflowers closest to the sidewalk. He also made a small sign to place near the garden, "Wild lawn supporting local bees and butterflies." The day Karen was expected to come by, Jake was ready. He hoped that maybe, just maybe, she would see the value in his approach. When Karen arrived, clipboard in hand, Jake greeted her with a smile. "Good morning, Karen," he said. "Thanks for coming by." Karen nodded briskly, but looked at the sign with a raised eyebrow. "I understand your intentions, Jake, but many neighbors expect a certain standard. It's about keeping things uniform." Jake nodded. "I get that. But I'm trying to create a little refuge for wildlife right here. I've read that letting lawns grow naturally can help with pollinators and improve the environment." Karen's expression softened a little. "That's interesting, but I'm not sure everyone would agree. The HOA rules exist to maintain property values and keep the neighborhood looking its best." Jake smiled. "Maybe there's a way to balance both. I'm willing to keep my lawn tidy along the edges and maintain safety, but I'd love for the board to consider more flexible ideas." Karen paused, considering his words. She was used to tradition, but perhaps Jake's passion was worth listening to. Before she left, she said, "I'll bring this up at the next meeting. In the meantime, please keep your lawn neat, especially near the sidewalks." As Karen walked away, Jake felt hopeful. Maybe this was the start of a new conversation, one that could bring fresh ideas to the neighborhood. That evening, Jake sat on his porch, watching the sun set over his little wild garden. The bees hummed softly among the flowers, and a pair of birds flitted from branch to branch. The lawn might not look like everyone else's, but it was his choice. And now, maybe, it could be part of the neighborhood story too. After Karen's visit, Jake felt a mix of relief and determination. He knew that changing minds wasn't going to be easy, especially when it came to something as personal as how a yard looked. But he was ready to share why his lawn was different, why he believed it was worth it. The next day, Jake decided to invite a few neighbors over for coffee. He thought a friendly conversation might be the best way to explain his approach. So, As the sun rose, he brewed fresh coffee and set out some homemade muffins on his porch table. One by one, neighbors stopped by, curious about the sign he had placed on his lawn and the recent letter from Karen. Most were polite but cautious. Jake started by sharing his story. "I didn't want to just have a green lawn," he explained. "Okay? I wanted a space that felt alive. Okay? By letting some parts grow naturally, I'm helping the bees and butterflies find food, and birds come by to visit. It's a little ecosystem." He showed them the different plants, wildflowers, clover, and grasses that made his lawn special. "These plants don't just look nice, they support the environment. I'm careful to keep the edges trimmed for safety and to keep things tidy." One neighbor, Mrs. Lee, nodded thoughtfully. "That sounds wonderful. I didn't realize lawns could do so much more than just look neat." Another neighbor, Mr. Benson, who usually kept his yard perfectly manicured, smiled. "I admit it looks different, but there's something charming about it. I might try some wildflowers myself." As more neighbors joined the conversation, Jake felt encouraged. They asked questions about natural lawn care. He shared tips on how to attract pollinators without making the yard look messy. But when Karen arrived, she listened quietly, arms crossed. "I appreciate your passion, Jake," she said when the group quieted. "But our Homeowners Association guidelines exist to ensure uniformity. I worry that if every lawn looks different, it could affect how the neighborhood is perceived." Jake understood her concern but gently replied, "Uniformity can be good, but diversity can bring beauty and life. I'm not asking for chaos. It's just a chance to try something a bit different while keeping things safe and neat where it matters." Karen looked around at the neighbors, some nodding in agreement. "Perhaps there's room for a discussion. I'll suggest that the board consider ways to allow for alternative lawn care while maintaining standards." The group exchanged hopeful glances. Over the next few days, Jake continued caring for his lawn, making sure to keep the edges tidy and removing any plants that might block sidewalks. He also began journaling the wildlife he spotted: bees, butterflies, and small birds visiting the flowers. One afternoon, Karen stopped by again. "Jake, I saw a few bees in your yard today," she said with a small smile. "I didn't expect to notice, but it did catch my attention." Jake smiled back. "Thanks, Karen. It's the little things that make a difference." She nodded thoughtfully. "I'm going to bring this up at the next HOA meeting. It might be time for us to rethink some of our rules." Jake felt a spark of hope. This was progress. Later that week, Jake received an email from a neighbor he barely knew. It simply said, "Thank you for showing us a new way to care for our yards. Your lawn inspired me." Jake smiled, realizing that change, even slow and small, was beginning to grow. After the small gathering on his porch, Jake felt encouraged. His neighbors were curious, and even Karen seemed willing to listen. But he knew actions would speak louder than words. If he wanted to change minds, he needed to show them the beauty and benefits of his natural lawn care approach. Over the next few weeks, Jake set to work. He didn't just let the grass grow wild, he began planting colorful wildflowers and arranging small, artistic garden features that blended with the natural setting. He added a few hand-painted signs with messages like "Welcome pollinators" and "Watch for birds." A simple bird bath appeared near the corner of his yard, and he placed a small bench beneath a tree where neighbors could sit, and enjoy the view. His efforts quickly began to catch attention. Neighbors passing by slowed down, often pausing to admire the bursts of yellow, purple, and red wildflowers brightening the green lawn. Children pointed excitedly at butterflies fluttering between blossoms, and adults stopped to ask Jake questions about the plants and how he maintained the yard. One morning, Karen herself was seen walking slowly along the sidewalk past Jake's house. She stopped to observe the garden more closely, taking note of the neat edges, the healthy plants, and the gentle hum of bees. A small smile touched her lips before she continued on her way. Word started to spread. Few neighbors who had been quiet before came over to compliment Jake's yard. Mrs. Alvarez, who usually preferred tidy shrubs and trimmed lawns, admitted, "I never thought I'd like wildflowers, but this looks inviting." Mr. Thompson, who had recently retired, mentioned, "Maybe it's time I try something a little different." "You've inspired me." Even some of the younger families began asking for advice. Intrigued by the mix of beauty and nature Jake had created right in his front yard. With this new wave of interest, Jake felt hopeful. He knew that the HOA meeting was coming up soon, and Karen would likely bring up the issue of his lawn. But now, instead of a complaint, she might face a neighborhood that was beginning to see value in his approach. One afternoon, as Jake was planting a small patch of purple coneflowers, Karen approached again, this time without her clipboard. She hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Jake, I wanted to say, your lawn has really changed since we first spoke. It looks well cared for, and it's clear you've put a lot of effort into it." Jake smiled warmly. "Thanks, Karen. I'm glad you noticed. It's important to me that the yard isn't just beautiful, but also healthy for the environment." Karen nodded slowly. "I'm still concerned about keeping our neighborhood looking consistent, but I'm starting to understand that there's more than one way to do that." Their conversation was interrupted by a group of kids running past, chasing a butterfly. Karen watched them, softness in her eyes. "Maybe I've been too focused on rules and not enough on what makes a place feel like home," she said quietly. Jake thought for a moment. It's all about balance, isn't it? Respecting the neighborhood's standards, but also allowing a bit of creativity and nature. Karen smiled, the tension between them easing. "That balance might be something worth discussing at the meeting," she said. "I'll bring your ideas forward." Jake felt a rush of hope. The journey was far from over, but this small step was encouraging. As Karen walked away, Jake returned to his garden, feeling more certain than ever. He was ready to show the neighborhood that a lawn could be more than just grass. It could be a living, breathing part of the community. The neighborhood was beginning to notice a shift, since Jake had transformed his lawn into a vibrant, welcoming space filled with wildflowers and gentle greenery. More people were stopping by, curious to learn what made it so different. The usual routine of tidy, identical lawns was quietly giving way to questions, conversations, and a growing appreciation for Jake's approach. Neighbors who had once hurried past now slowed down, sometimes pausing to take photos or simply admire the splash of colors and the gentle buzz of bees. At the next neighborhood gathering, Jake was surprised to find several people approaching him, eager to ask about natural lawn care and the small changes he had made. It was clear that his passion was contagious. One afternoon, Mrs. Johnson, a retired teacher known for her neat rose garden, came over with a basket of fresh cookies. "I never really thought about letting nature have a little more freedom," she said, smiling. "But your yard has made me rethink what a lawn can be." Jake thanked her warmly and offered tips on planting wildflowers that were easy to maintain and attractive to POLLINATOR. Meanwhile, Karen was watching these changes with a mix of curiosity and concern. She still valued the neighborhood's order, but couldn't ignore the growing positive feedback Jake's lawn was receiving at a homeowners association meeting. Karen brought up the topic with the board. "I think Jake's lawn has sparked a lot of interest," she said. "Perhaps it's time we consider allowing some flexibility in our guidelines, at least for those willing to maintain safety and tidiness in other ways." Her suggestion surprised some board members, but others were open to exploring new ideas. Jake attended the meeting to share his experiences and explain the environmental benefits of natural lawn care. He spoke calmly and clearly, emphasizing how thoughtful landscaping could enhance the neighborhood's beauty rather than detract from it. Several neighbors voiced their support, sharing how Jake's lawn had inspired them to try new things and Their own yards, the board agreed to form a small committee to explore possible updates to the lawn care rules, aiming for a balance between tradition and innovation. Back in the neighborhood, Jake's lawn had become a small hub of learning and inspiration. Children from nearby houses would sometimes stop by to watch butterflies or spot birds, and adults would gather occasionally to swap gardening tips. Even Karen found herself asking Jake questions about the plants and the best way to care for her own yard when time was tight. One afternoon, as Jake was watering a new patch of native flowers, Karen approached hesitantly. "Jake," she began, "I could use a little help with my lawn. I've been so busy, and it's not looking its best." Jake smiled. "I'd be happy to help. Sometimes it just takes a little guidance." Their conversation marked a turning point. The distance between them was shrinking, replaced by a mutual respect and an unexpected partnership. As the days passed, Jake found himself visiting Karen's yard more often, sharing ideas and lending a hand. The neighborhood watched quietly. Some surprised, others quietly pleased. It wasn't just about lawns anymore, it was about connection, understanding, and finding new ways to care for the place they all called home. Karen stood in her front yard, surveying the patchy grass and struggling shrubs. Between work commitments and family obligations, she simply hadn't found the time to keep her lawn in the pristine condition she was known for. The once neat borders were overgrown, and the usual bright green lawn had faded to a dull, uneven carpet. She hesitated before picking up the phone and dialing Jake's number. Despite their past differences, she respected his knowledge and was willing to put aside her pride for the sake of her home. "Hi, Jake. It's Karen," she said when he answered. "I was wondering if you might have some time to help me with my lawn. I've been overwhelmed lately, and it's not looking its best." Jake's voice was warm and friendly. "Of course, Karen, I'm happy to help. Let's find a time that works for you." Later that week, Jake arrived with his gardening tools and a cheerful attitude. Karen watched as he moved methodically, trimming, weeding, and planting small patches of flowers that brightened the yard. He explained each step, sharing tips on how to keep the lawn healthy without spending too much time on it. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, Karen felt a sense of relief she hadn't expected. The yard was transforming before her eyes, and with Jake's guidance, she began to see her lawn in a new light. "I appreciate this," Karen said sincerely. "I didn't realize how much a little help and knowledge could change things." Jake smiled. "It's all about working with nature, not against it. Your lawn can be beautiful and welcoming without needing constant upkeep." Word spread quickly in the neighborhood that Jake was helping Karen with her lawn. Some neighbors raised their eyebrows, surprised by the unexpected partnership. Karen, known for her strict standards, was now working alongside the very person she had once challenged as days turned into weeks. Jake made regular visits to Karen's house, helping with mowing, planting, and maintaining the yard. Their conversations grew longer, filled with stories, laughter, and shared experiences. Karen began to appreciate Jake's perspective more deeply, understanding that his approach wasn't about rebellion, but about respect for the environment and the neighborhood alike. One afternoon, as they worked side by side, Karen mentioned, "I never thought I'd say this, but I'm glad you're around. You've made a real difference here." Jake nodded thoughtfully. Sometimes it takes a little change to see things clearly. Their partnership did not go unnoticed. Neighbors who had once been skeptical started to reconsider their own lawns and the neighborhood's guidelines. The simple act of collaboration between two very different people was inspiring others to rethink what a lawn and a neighborhood could be. Meanwhile, the HOA board continued to discuss updates to the rules, influenced by the growing support for Jake's natural lawn care ideas and the visible benefits it brought to the community. Karen found herself in an unexpected position. advocating for balance between tradition and innovation, a stance she'd never imagined she'd take. As the sun set one evening, Karen and Jake stood together in her yard, admiring the vibrant colors and gentle hum of life buzzing around them. "It's not just a lawn anymore," Karen said quietly. "It's a place where things can grow in more ways than one." Jake smiled. Exactly. Their story was becoming a new chapter for the neighborhood, one built on understanding, cooperation, and the simple beauty of a well-tended lawn. The day of the Homeowners Association meeting had finally arrived. The room was filled with familiar faces, neighbors, board members, and Karen, who seemed more composed and thoughtful than usual. Jake walked in quietly, aware that today's discussion could mark a turning point for the neighborhood. For weeks, Jake had prepared to speak. He carried notes about the benefits of natural lawn care, how it supported pollinators, reduced water consumption, and added a unique charm to the neighborhood. More importantly, he hoped to bridge the gap between tradition and innovation. Karen was the first to speak. "I want to thank everyone for coming today," she began. "As many of you know, we've had some discussions about lawn care standards. Jake has been an active member in this conversation, and I believe it's important we listen." She took a breath and then continued. "Jake's approach has sparked curiosity and even enthusiasm among many residents. I've seen how it brings people together and promotes environmental awareness." The room was quiet, some nodding, others looking thoughtful. Jake stepped forward. "Thank you, Karen. I believe that maintaining our neighborhood's beauty doesn't have to mean uniformity. By embracing diverse lawn care methods, we can create spaces that are both healthy and inviting." He explained the environmental impact of reducing chemicals and allowing native plants to thrive. "Our neighborhood can be a model for thoughtful landscaping that supports wildlife while keeping safety and neatness in mind." Several neighbors shared their experiences. Mrs. Lee spoke about planting wildflowers inspired by Jake's yard. And Mr. Benson mentioned how he had reduced water use by changing his lawn care routine. One board member asked, "How can we ensure these alternative lawns still meet community standards?" Jake replied by setting clear guidelines about safety, edge maintenance, and overall tidiness. We can allow creativity without losing the neighborhood's appeal. Karen then proposed a trial program, allowing a limited number of homes to adopt natural lawn care practices with the board's support and regular check-ins. The suggestion sparked lively but respectful debate. Some members worried about consistency, but many saw the potential benefits. In the end, the board voted to approve the trial program. It was a compromise, a step forward without abandoning tradition. Jake felt a surge of pride as the room applauded. This was more than a win for him. It was a sign the neighborhood was ready for change. After the meeting, neighbors approached Jake and Karen, congratulating them both. Karen smiled and said quietly, "I'm glad we had this conversation. It's been eye-opening." Jake nodded. "It's only the beginning, but it feels like progress." Back at home, Jake looked out at his lawn, now a symbol of balance and possibility. His journey had started with a letter from Karen, but it had grown into something much bigger, a chance to reshape how people cared for their homes and their environment. The neighborhood was no longer just about rules and uniformity. It was about respect, understanding, and a shared commitment to a better way. The weeks following the HOA meeting felt like a breath of fresh air for the neighborhood. With the trial program approved, several homeowners, including Jake, began experimenting with natural lawn care, blending the traditional with the innovative. The change brought a renewed sense of energy and community spirit. Jake noticed something else too. His relationship with Karen, once strained by strict rules and opposing viewpoints, had shifted in ways he hadn't expected. The two had grown from reluctant acquaintances to occasional collaborators, sharing tips and stories over the fence or during neighborhood events. One sunny Saturday morning, Jake was mowing his lawn when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned to see Karen carrying a small pot of bright marigolds. "I thought these might add a little color to your garden," she said, a shy smile playing on her lips. Jake accepted the flowers with gratitude. "Thanks, Karen. They'll fit right in." They spent the morning chatting as Jake helped her plant the marigolds along the edge of her yard. Karen shared stories about her childhood garden and how she had always loved flowers but struggled to find time for gardening in recent years. "I'm glad you asked for help," Jake said. "Gardening is more enjoyable with company." Karen nodded. "I'm learning that. It's nice to have someone who understands." Their conversations grew more frequent, often drifting beyond lawns and flowers to books, travel, and family memories. Despite their initial differences, a genuine friendship was blossoming. Meanwhile, the neighborhood began to look different too. Lawns that once followed a rigid pattern now showcased a variety of plants and textures, native grasses swaying gently. Beside patches of wildflowers, neat pathways winding through small gardens, and bird feeders hanging from trees. Children played more often outdoors. Fascinated by the buzzing bees and bright butterflies attracted to the colorful yards, Mrs. Johnson, inspired by Jake and Karen's example, organized a weekend workshop on pollinator-friendly gardening. The event drew a crowd eager to learn and share ideas, further strengthening the community's bonds. Karen surprised many by volunteering to help coordinate the workshop. Her transformation from strict rule enforcer to enthusiastic participant was evident to all. One evening, after the workshop, neighbors gathered for an informal barbecue at Jake's house. Laughter and conversation filled the air, the warmth of friendship palpable. Karen raised her glass. "To new beginnings," she said, "and to learning that sometimes change is a good thing." Everyone cheered. Jake looked around, feeling grateful. What had started as a conflict over a lawn had become something much more, a story about growth, understanding, and the power of community. As the night wore on, Jake and Karen stepped outside, watching the stars emerge in the clear sky. "I never expected this," Karen admitted. "Not the friendship, and certainly not the support from the neighbors." Jake smiled. "Sometimes the best things come from unexpected places." They stood side by side, quiet but content, knowing that together they had helped their neighborhood grow in more ways than one. Months had passed since the HOA meeting that had shifted the neighborhood's view on lawn care. What once had been a source of tension had blossomed into a shared passion for creativity and environmental care. The neighborhood was no longer defined by uniformity but by the unique beauty each homeowner contributed. Jake's yard remained a vibrant centerpiece, wildflowers swaying in the breeze, native plants thriving, and the hum of pollinators filling the air. But it was more than just a garden. It was a symbol of change and cooperation. Karen's yard, too, had transformed. Her once patchy grass was now dotted with colorful plants, carefully maintained, yet welcoming and lively. Her days of strict enforcement had given way to an appreciation for balance and growth. One crisp Saturday morning, the neighborhood organized its first annual Garden and Lawn Festival, celebrating the diversity and creativity that had taken root. Families came out with picnic blankets and cameras. Neighbors swapped stories and plant cuttings. And children explored nature with wide eyes and curious hands. Jake and Karen stood side by side near the entrance, greeting friends and neighbors alike. The festival was a testament to their journey from confrontation to collaboration. From complaint to community, Karen smiled as she watched a group of children learning about bees at a small exhibit Jake had helped set up. "I never imagined it would come to this," she said softly. Jake nodded. "Neither did I, but it feels right." The festival included workshops on sustainable gardening, native plants, and natural lawn care. The HOA had even adopted new guidelines that encouraged diversity while maintaining safety and neatness. Thanks to the committee Karen had helped lead. As the afternoon sun warmed the gathering, Jake took a moment to reflect on the journey that had brought them here. He remembered the first letter from Karen, the tension in their early conversations, and the determination it took to stand firm in his beliefs. More than that, he appreciated the patience and willingness Karen showed to listen and learn. Their story had become a reminder to the entire neighborhood. Progress isn't about forcing change, but about understanding, compromise, and growing together. Before the festival ended, Karen approached Jake, holding a small plaque engraved with the words, "For inspiring change and community spirit." "It's from the neighbors," she said. "You helped us see a different way." Jake accepted the plaque with genuine gratitude. "I'm honored, and it wouldn't have been possible without you." They shared a warm handshake, a symbol of respect and friendship built on the foundation of shared growth. As the festival lights twinkled and neighbors mingled, Jake looked around and felt a deep sense of belonging. The lawns were different, the rules had changed, and the neighborhood was stronger than ever, just in appearance, but in spirit, and somewhere between the flowers and the laughter, between the old rules and new beginnings, a community had truly found its harmony.